Hey, what's going on, Science 10s? Mr. Walton here. Today we're going to talk about photosynthesis and cell respiration. Now, photosynthesis is the fundamental process that supports the vast majority of life on the planet. That doesn't mean that all of the 99% can do this, but it's the vast majority of life on the planet is dependent on this process. It involves converting the energy of sunlight into energy stored in the chemical bonds of glucose. The reaction for photosynthesis that takes place, remember, in plants and some single-celled organisms like algae. So the chemical reaction for glucose is carbon dioxide and water makes glucose and oxygen. Now, this isn't a balanced chemical reaction, so we're going to have to balance it. The way you balance it, it's relatively straightforward. We need 6 carbons, so 6 carbons. We need 12 hydrogens, so we need 6 times 2 is 12 hydrogens. And then we need to figure out how many oxygens are left over. Well, when you do the math, you need 6 times 2 is 12 in addition to these 6, and that adds up to 18. So this is how you balance this chemical reaction. Now, there's something kind of missing in here, and that's the fact that we need light, most commonly sunlight, in order to be able to do this. Now, the glucose here is a high energy molecule. The glucose is what other organisms eat, and they get their energy from the glucose. Now, they don't get it directly from glucose. They get it from lots of different other molecules that are made from glucose, but the glucose is kind of the first step in being able to store that energy for other organisms to be able to use. Now, plants and some single-celled organisms like algae, they can perform photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs in an organelle called the chloroplast. And the chloroplast, they are these green organelles. So they're shaped kind of like an oval. And what they have is they've got 2 membranes. They've got an outer membrane and they've got an inner membrane. And inside, they've got these things called thylakoids. And they look like coins that are stacked on top of each other. And sometimes these coins are connected. So in here, we've got an outer membrane. We also have an inner membrane. And this is really crucial for the operation of the chloroplast. And then we've got these coins that are called thylakoids. The chloroplast is a membrane-bound organelle, right? It's got 2 membranes that contain the chemical chlorophyll. And the chlorophyll, that's the molecule that first accepts the light. So that's kind of almost the most important part of this whole process because it kicks off the entire process. The chlorophyll is the green thing that makes this chloroplast green, and it's subsequently what makes plants green and algae green as well. Now, that's how plants and some single-celled organisms, they make the glucose. But you and I, we can't make glucose. So what we have to do is we have to eat plants, or we have to eat animals who have eaten plants in order to be able to get energy. So we undergo a process called cell respiration. Now, it's not just us that undergo cell respiration. Plants and algae undergo cell respiration as well. So plants store energy as glucose, but then they use that glucose up whenever there's no sunlight available, so like at night. So cell respiration is a process that all eukaryotic organisms, including plants and algae, and including us, animals, use to release the energy stored in carbohydrates like glucose. The chemical reaction for cell respiration is very similar to the chemical reaction for photosynthesis. So what do we need? What do we need in order to survive? Well, we need glucose, so C6H12O6. But what else do we need to survive? Well, we need oxygen, O2. And what do we get rid of? Well, we get rid of water and carbon dioxide. This is a lot like a combustion reaction from our chemistry unit. So again, we're going to look at this. Well, C6, so C6H12, so 6 times 2 is 12. And then we've got 6 and 12 is 18, so we need 6 times 12. There we go. So this is a completely balanced chemical reaction. But it doesn't describe the complete picture. Cell respiration takes place in an organelle called the mitochondria. The purpose of cell respiration, sugar like glucose and things like that, that's totally useless to us unless we can convert it into ATP. So this whole process is making ATP. We take ADP plus inorganic phosphate, and we turn it into ATP. That is the most important chemical as far as you're concerned for being able to perform tasks. Without ATP, your muscles can't contract. Your nerves can't fire electrical signals from one part of your body to the other. The cells, they can't actively transport other things. So this whole process here occurs in the mitochondria. And what does a mitochondria look like? Well, a mitochondria looks like it's a double membrane organelle again. I drew that wrong, sorry. It's a double membraned organelle, and it often is shown as being shaped like a kidney bean, but the inner organelle, the inner membrane of the mitochondria is wavy. And it's wavy because of something that we learned about last time. It's wavy because this inner membrane is trying to increase its surface area to volume ratio. So we've got an outer membrane and we've got an inner membrane. And the chemical reactions take place at these membranes and also in between the intermembrane space. So what do you need to know? What do you need to know from today's lesson? Well, you need to know the chemical reactions for both photosynthesis and cell respiration. Now let's take a look back at them. Here we're starting with glucose and using up oxygen. But in photosynthesis, we make glucose and make oxygen. Hopefully you can see photosynthesis and cell respiration are the exact opposite processes. They are exactly opposite from each other. Photosynthesis needs light. It requires light in order to go. And cell respiration uses glucose, and it makes ATP as kind of like a byproduct of the whole thing. You don't need to know really any of these names, but you need to know how to spot a chloroplast in a cell. So it's going to be green. It's going to look kind of like a bean, but it's going to have coins stacked on top of each other. And a mitochondria, you need to know that it looks a lot like a kidney bean again, but its inner membrane is wavy because it's trying to increase the surface area as much as possible of that inner membrane. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I would love to help you out. Otherwise, have a great day.